Good day to everyone joining us and welcome to today's Xtalks webinar. Today's talk is entitled Modernized Approach to Functional Service, FSP, Necessary Evolution on the Road to True Partnership. My name is Sonia Hunt and it's my pleasure to be your Xtalks moderator for today. Today's webinar will run for approximately 45 minutes. This presentation includes a Q&A session with our panelists. This webinar is designed to be interactive, and webinars work best when you're involved. So please feel free to submit your questions and comments for our speakers throughout this presentation by using the questions chat box, and we'll try to attend to your questions during the Q&A session. Now, this chat box is located in the control panel, and that's found on the right-hand side of your screen. If you require assistance, please contact me at any time by sending me a message using that chat panel. At this time, all participants are in listen-only mode. Please note that this event will be recorded and made available to you for future streaming on xtalks.com. At this point, I'd like to thank TFS Health Science who developed the content for this presentation. TFS Health Science is a clinical development organization providing support for biotech and pharmaceutical companies with tailored drug development solutions. They combine the functional services, capabilities, and global reach of a CRO with the flexibility and personal approach only a mid-sized CRO can deliver. With over 700 staff and offices in North America and Europe, the organization provides multi-therapeutic full service and functional service solutions, including single service and outsourcing models. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce you to your speakers for today's roundtable discussion. And first, I'd like to introduce you to Kymberli Shropshire. She's a Global Head of Functional Services Partnerships with TFS Health Science. So Kymberli is responsible for the operational delivery of global partnerships and relationship management. Kymberli has spent over 20 years working for 2 of the top 5 global clinical research organizations and a top US academic research organization where she has applied her leadership in a variety of functions, including global alliance management, data operation, contracts, and site management. Next, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Ian Kovacs. He's the Executive Director of Safety and Pharmacovigilance with TFS Health Science. And Ian is a highly motivated business leader with a proven record of accomplishment in establishing and maintaining profitable and compliant pharmacovigilance systems and leading operational teams. He has over 20 years operational and leadership experience in all areas of pharmacovigilance, including EU, QPPV, and medical information gain within both pharmaceutical companies and CROs. And next, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Allison Sampson. She is the Head of Pediatrics, Rare Diseases, Orphan Products Europe with TFS Health Sciences. And Allison has over 20 years of clinical research experience. She has a project management background, leading both clinical cross-functional teams. And Allison has experience of a wide variety of therapeutic areas with particular expertise in rare diseases in neonates and adolescents. Now it's my pleasure to introduce you to Dorothy Blythe, and she's a Principal Clinical Data Manager with TFS Health Science. And Dottie, as we call her, has 37 years of project and data management experience spanning a breadth of role across the pharmaceutical industry. Specifically, she has managed a variety of programs, including real-world evidence research. Dottie has managed countless clinical trials, as well as lead strategic initiatives across data management. So today, our panel of FSP experts are excited to address questions about their FSP experience at TFS Health Science. In an ever-changing leadership of clinical development, the functional service model has had to evolve along the way to successfully work with biopharmaceutical and biotechnology. This session, I will be your moderator, and I'm going to ask the panel questions for the roundtable discussion. Then we'll open questions to the audience. So please hold your questions till the end. So let's start first with 2 poll questions for our audience to engage in, and this is done in real time. So I will give you 40 seconds to complete this poll, and you should see it in front of you. There it is. So all you have to do is select on the below. And the question that we have for you is, has your organization ever used functional service model? So your options are yes or no. So please go ahead and pick one of the below, and then I will close the polls and share the results with you. Your participation is strongly encouraged and very much appreciated. Okay, it looks like we have the majority of our audience have cast their vote, so thank you very much for that. Let's take a look at the results. Okay, so here's the result. And the result, oh, this is great. We have 100% of the audience are saying yes to, has your organization ever used functional service model? So thank you very much for that. Now let's take a look at question number 2, poll question number 2. And I will launch that for you right now. And you should see it appear in front of you. And there it is, everyone. Okay, so just like before, this will be done in real time. So if you could just please go ahead and select from the below. The question that we have for you is, what is your or your organization's experience level working in an FSP model? So we have 3 options you can choose from the below: no experience, some experience, or experienced. Oh, well, let's look at our group. We have the majority of our audience have cast their votes. I'm going to leave a few more seconds for those of you who have not. If you can go ahead and do so now, that'd be greatly appreciated. Okay, that looks like it's everyone. Let's take a look at the results. Okay, the results are here, and let's just take a look. So we have here 0% are saying no experience. We got 20% are saying some experience, and 80% of our audience are saying experience. So thank you very much, everyone, for participating in our first 2 poll questions. Okay, now let's get started. All right, so let's welcome first our TFS panel. So welcome, everyone. And I want to first start off with, let's get right to the heart of the discussion today. And I'm going to start off first with Kymberli. So Kymberli, can you tell the audience about what is TFS's modernized approach to functional services?
Certainly. Thank you so much, Sonia. And thanks everyone for joining us today. At TFS, we really have taken a look at the market and our client needs. We really ensure that we focus on our client partners. And in doing so, as a mid-sized CRO, we really have seen that the old model of an outsourcing arrangement really has dated itself. And the modernized approach is really talking about strategically growing and pivoting to our business and our clients' needs. And that business really also entails everything from our participants to the technology that we use. And in a specific function, it's often that you want to ensure that you've thought through not only that functional area, but also the therapeutic expertise. We focus on ensuring that our FSP team is aligned with our projects, that we bring the expertise in the forefront for our client partners. It also is the fact that it comes to supporting the overall clinical development program, or device for that matter, as we know that digital health is growing, and that's a big market for us to think about, especially with COVID. That really has brought to the forefront that we can think outside the box, and that's where functional service partnerships and FSP really also thrives, that we're able to allow our client partners to focus on their core functionality, whether that be med device, as a biotech, the science of their drug and drug development line, and even a mid-size as we're growing in their portfolio from, you know, making those right decisions. And the service and the function that we provide, we specialize in that. We bring the expertise to the table, from clinical, regulatory, biometrics, keeping the data cohesive with data management, medical writing, and our biostats team. And drug safety, which is, you know, not only our clinical safety, but post-marketing and how crucial that is. So really the ability to scale a team to meet organizational function, and also really be that collaborative partner alongside our clients, is where we have taken a modern approach to FSP services.
Oh, thank you very much, Kymberli, for that detailed answer there. All right, let's move over to Allison. Allison, as the head of the therapeutic area, which includes rare diseases, what do you see as the client value of an FSP?
Okay, so well, thank you, Sonia.
Yeah.
So yes, just picking up on some of the things that Kymberli said. So in rare disease, trials are usually a challenge. That's because there is often little or no track record in clinical research in that therapeutic area. So it's a challenging area to work in. Protocol amendments are common, and you need a very flexible approach. So as I mentioned, from what Kymberli was saying, FSP used to be a model that you would look for bigger trials, maybe phase 3 trials, but we are seeing that FSP works really well in rare disease trials. And the reason for that is that rare disease trials are very unpredictable. all trials are very unpredictable, but rare disease particularly, because there is no track record. The trials are often experiencing protocol amendment. They are designed actually for protocol amendment to some extent, often for adaptive design, so no go and go decisions, and these can steer the path of the trial and change the scope of the trial literally overnight. So you can expand into a wider therapeutic area or not. And the FSP model really works well in this disease area. So in a traditional full service model, you might expect in these ever-changing times and ever-changing protocol that you would have to go through perhaps change order in a full service model, which would mean time, which would mean a delay in responding to regulatory agencies. But in an FSP model, it does this. It means that you can expand or contract your team with ease to some extent. You can adapt to changes in the scale of the study or not. And it's a really, I think, efficient way of working in a rare disease trial or across rare disease studies, which are quite often, biotechs often run a pipeline of rare disease studies, and they have concurrent studies running at the same time. So I think the FSP model in a rare disease scenario is really efficient and really effective.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Allison, for answering that. Let's go back to Kymberli. Kymberli, there are different outsourcing models in the industry. Can you tell us what they are and what TFS offers to client partners? Oh, I'm sorry, Kymberli, but for some reason we can't hear you. Try it again.
Is that good, Sonia, now?
Yes, now we can hear you. Perfect. Thank you.
My pleasure. It's quite interesting, and the poll, as we've seen earlier from our audience and their experience, functional services had different meanings depending on, as it's grown in the industry, different companies have taken on those different definitions, but really there's core areas that stand out. And one of those is really a tactical partnership and a service provider. So really it's that providing a functional service designated for a one-to-one project need. And then you have your preferred provider, really providing that service offering under a master agreement or across a book of work. And then the strategic partnership, kind of a non-compete partnership, supporting each other in a variety of services. And I say each other because a partnership truly means that, is that you really want both organizations' values to come across. And one of those key pieces for us at TFS, that is where we see the mutual benefit of a relationship. And we really focus on not only the one-off job, but really the long-term relationship. And that's where a fit-for-purpose model is essential, as Allison says, with rare disease, for example, thinking about that therapeutic area, being able to hit the ground running, knowing that you have the challenges in patient recruitment or also in retention or the type of results that you're going to have, making those real-time decisions, and having a team wrapped around that particular design for a protocol or portfolio of work really ensures that the team is able to be successful and take away and de-risk, if you will, some of the challenges that happens with a one-to-one project start. We're able to really, at TFS, pull in what is important about a fit-for-purpose design, which is cultural fit, and also functional expertise. We keep this top of mind. We ensure that we're building upon that every single time, and we're learning those lessons all along the way across our client partners' portfolios.
Thank you for those key points there. Thank you so much for that, Kymberli. All right, we're going to shift over to Ian. Ian, can you tell the audience what functional outsourcing means in the context of safety?
Sure. So outsourcing in a functional capacity in the context of safety is really about outsourcing the entire safety function. So specifically for the small emerging companies, really it's about outsourcing nearly all of the safety activities. So for clinical trials, typically you'd outsource all of the safety for the sponsor across all of the studies, irrespective of who is the clinical CRO. And in post-marketing safety, it's typically about outsourcing the entire pharmacovigilance system. And then what we see is, as the company size increases, this is when companies typically start to develop their own internal safety capabilities, and so the complexity of the partnership changes. So rather than outsourcing the entire safety department, you're typically building that partnership around the company's existing infrastructure. Now, when you look at large pharma, the outsourcing of safety as a function is really about outsourcing part of the pharmacovigilance system. So for example, with large pharma, it may be about outsourcing the case processing rather than the outsourcing of the entire safety department.
Okay, good point. Thank you so much for that, Ian. All right, we're going to shift over to Dottie. Dottie, relinquishing operational control can be uncomfortable. Can you speak to any advantages to working with FSPs that compensate for the control that is transferred?
Sure. Thank you, Sonia. One major advantage is access to the wealth of experiences that we get by working with so many different sponsors and using so many different systems and processes. And at TFS, we take an intentional approach to learning from all these experiences and really trying to distill them down into best practices and also, just as importantly, into practices to be avoided. And this applies to both systems and processes. So the FSP relationship brings the value of all those experiences to your company without the investment by your company that would otherwise be required to get those learnings firsthand. So by allowing us to handle the technology and the operations, we are going to choose the right tool for the job. We're going to relieve you of the stressors of investing in the resources it would take to evaluate those tools. We're going to relieve you of the stressors associated with procuring the various resources across the different roles that are going to be required to make that, to bring you to, what you're looking to get out of the effort. And we're going to take all of that and manage it for you, allowing you to stay focused on the science and not have to worry about the operations. So I think that is a nice trade. When you're relinquishing control, you're giving it to someone that you know is experienced and can make those decisions for you.
All right, thank you very much, Dottie, for that. Okay, we're going to shift over to Kymberli now. Kymberli, can you speak to the advantages for companies to outsource in an FSP model?
Sure. Picking up where Donnie left off, it's the operational expertise and also taking on the technology, the tool sets, the overhead, if you will, within an FSP model as a CRO partner. And I'll emphasize partner in this as well, is in order to really see that those responsibilities adds value to our client partner. What I will say in many examples that we've had in our experience in our 25 years of existence is that when we focus on establishing our providership to providing services to our clients, we really manage the functional expertise, but also understand the baseline values of our client partner. That synergy really comes together and it creates a long-term relationship. We actually offer different models and a different approach because flexibility, as previously mentioned, is really key. One of the keys to a partnership. And we have preferred provider, where again we are, the provider of choice for a function or for multiple functions. We provide the oversight. We can bring in the tooling. We're asked to provide that tooling expertise across different platforms, whether that be a customer's platform or our own. We also work in a hybrid model. We work with our full service teams where it may be a full service project on a couple of projects, and then we have the full portfolio for safety, for example, or for biometrics. So that also, again, lends to the ability for consistency, especially when it comes to safety, and even can speak to this a bit further. But even in the biostat space and biometric space holistically, for emerging companies, mid-sized pharma, biotech, again, the thought of FSP seems overwhelming because you're thinking, you know, am I going to have a team? I don't need a team of 100 or this massive group to come in and take over this operation. But really the approach is the investment in creating a team that is working alongside you based on your need and your size. And so we take on that complexity that can be really time consuming for our client partners. And it really, again, decreases their overhead costs, and then it adds to the collaboration and the expertise that we can bring to the table.
Okay, well, thank you so much for that, Kymberli. All right, let's go back to Dottie. Dottie, can you tell us how your experience as an embedded resource brought value to the client? Were any benefits realized that were not anticipated?
Sure. Being fully immersed in the client's world allowed for really a seamless integration of my skill sets and experience into their already established structure. And that was really the benefit that was anticipated. The client's immediate needs were met. And that allowed for additional wins and trust to be established, relationships to get forged. And there ended up being numerous examples of personal partnerships that were across the two companies. And I believe that really laid the foundation for the extension of that trust, which eventually led to a formal partnership. And that's the benefit that was not anticipated. The need for specific support translated into really a full support system. And that system is flexible and fit for purpose and continues to evolve as the needs change.
Thank you so much, Dottie. Ian, can you tell us about the TFS's experience for functional outsourcing in safety?
Sure. So TFS has got a very long history in providing safety services in a functional outsourcing model. And this is both in clinical development and in post-marketing. We've got several customers where we manage end-to-end safety in both clinical and post-marketing, and then we've got some where we started in clinical and it's developed into post-marketing. And I think really when I look at the TFS experience, I think it stems from the size company it is, because when you're looking to outsource safety, you really need to have trust in the team that you're going to be outsourcing to. You need to know that they can deliver the work, but you also need to make sure that the team is going to be a good fit. And I think right from the outset, it's really important that you can meet the team that's ultimately going to be assigned to the partnership. Now, I think this is where it gets much more challenging with the larger service providers, because it's much more difficult to bring that team that's going to be assigned right to the discussion up front. And so I think really for the majority of our partnerships, we've got those with the mid-sized companies where we're providing either the full outsourced safety department or where we've developed a bespoke partnership model that's deeply integrated into the client's existing infrastructure. And we've built those partnerships by having those conversations up front and understanding their needs and building our partnership around those needs.
Thank you so much, Ian, for that. Okay, so during the discussion today, we have learned that there are different types of FSP models, which can be applied to cross-functional areas. So Kymberli, how does TFS bring a suitable FSP model?
Yes, so you know, we really look at focusing on the ability to speak strategically and strategically from the onset. That starts with the RFP, that starts with the proposal. We're thinking about the long-term relationship from the beginning. You have our focus, and that's the differentiator. We focus as a mid-sized CRO on our clients, regardless of size, and we ensure that we are there for them all along the way. And that is important because a partnership, as Dottie mentioned, is based on trust. But it also is the ability for us to be able to take what we know and learn, both the good and bad. Lessons learned are essential for us to be able to springboard and continue and to evolve. And that's one of the pieces that differentiates us in our models, is that we use the experiences that we have to expand upon and take a tactical approach for that next project or that next protocol and that next design, as well as look at what's happening in our marketplace. As we know, technology is the center and bedrock of how we collect data now. The pandemic really has pushed in the forefront the ability to think outside the box with telehealth type of projects and support. You know, where we may have not used certain tools in the past, they're now becoming part of the ask that we receive in an RFP, and how can we do that and be innovative across. So that really is what's important. Again, it's not just for large pharma anymore. The evolution is about looking at a tactical approach that fits a relationship that's not just volume driven, but it's actually portfolio driven. And again, our size gives us the ability to support our client partners with a focus that others may not have.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Kymberli. All right, I'm going to go on to the next question. It looks like this is for Allison. Could you retain therapeutic expertise and knowledge between trials using an FSP model? And what advantages would a hybrid FSP model have? Allison?
So sorry, Sonia.
There we go, no problem.
There you go. I'm going to talk from a rare disease area point of view. So in rare disease, therapeutic knowledge is niche and rare by definition. So to retain that very special knowledge, an FSP model is actually really good. And in rare disease, it's quite common now to run a natural history study to look at the progression of the disease. But there's no actual history of it. And then typically to run an advanced therapy, so gene therapy or stem cell therapy study in conjunction with that. So these two studies could overlap. So an FSP model works really beautifully in this scenario. So you can have a team working on your natural history study that can easily move to your therapeutic study. They can expand or they can contract, and it works really, really nicely. And typically in rare disease, we tend to get biotech with venture capitalist funding to run these natural history and advanced therapy studies. And they tend to start out with a full service model because they don't have, they're usually virtual companies, they don't have the actual staff or team to run a clinical study. But as they expand and as they get more funding, they might move to an FSP model. And in the middle, we can offer hybrid models. So for example, we could offer safety or biometrics or medical writing, whatever these companies want or need. We as TFS are flexible. We offer both services. So we offer full service or niche FSP or anything in between. And I think this is really key about our offering, is that we can do this. We're experiencing in both aspects, and we can offer something that's really niche and fit for purpose. I think Dottie actually touched on that. We can really offer something that is bespoke for a client, and it will allow these smaller biotechs greater flexibility. It offers them cost savings in HR and recruiting people, but it also saves them time as well. In an FSP model, as opposed to full service model, you can expand and contract your teams very rapidly. So if you have a protocol amendment, for example, that changes the scope of your project, in an FSP model, that works very nicely. And so it allows biotechs and medium-sized pharma companies to plan efficiently. And I think this is a really key advantage of the FSP model, particularly with a medium-sized CRO.
Thank you, Allison, for that. Okay, let's just jump over to Dottie now. Dottie, from your experience, can you provide an example of how a partnership provided a potential competitive advantage?
Okay, I think that adaptive designs probably provide a great example of how an FSP partnership can offer an advantage over a one-off outsourcing situation. And I think Allison mentioned it in the context of rare diseases, but it's also really key in oncology because, you know, a lot of phase 1 trials that are adaptive designs as they try to focus in on the right approach and dose and those types of things. So by nature, these designs require agile support, and teams will often struggle to deliver even on one amendment. That's challenging enough. By the time you do the database updates and deal with all the downstream impacts from those database updates, such as impacts on exports, integrations, reports, there's a lot of work that cascades from it. So when teams are getting these amendments in fast succession, they feel like they're in startup mode for the life of the trial. But it's complicated by the twist they have to manage through a change order process each time. So it's very time consuming and can really get you off track. So what would really be ideal in these time sensitive situations, and really all of them are time sensitive usually, it would be a great advantage if the teams could kind of just get started right when agency approval comes through for the amendment. So with a partnership, you can do that, because what you can do is, and you have to balance your risk comfort. You can make as broad or as narrow an offering as people are comfortable with, but you can develop pre-approved units of work. So that's because you know you're going to have X, Y, and Z, certain activities that are going to have to happen. So if you talk about that up front, get pre-approved units of work, then the teams aren't able to move more swiftly. And the really great thing about that is oftentimes they're able to deliver in alignment with the sites getting IRB approvals. So you're not having a month or so go by where data are being gathered and can't be entered into the system. So safety surveillance and reporting may not even be impacted as they would if you were continuing to have to fill out paper and send it in manually until an update came through. So that is a real tangible competitive advantage. And I think when you compare that to the traditional approach, when you have weeks of teasing out the changes from the protocol, making sure that you're translating those updates into the database, getting cross-functional agreement that you're capturing all the right things in the right formats, and that'll translate into the right components to be analyzed. Then you have to get estimates from all the people across all the groups that are going to be required in order to make these changes happen. Put that in a change order, get that over to the client, get that reviewed, approved, back over, and then you can start your work. By eliminating a number of those steps, you can really save a lot of time. And as I said, oftentimes you'll be able to deliver in time for sites getting their approval. So I think that is a nice example of how a partnership can give you a competitive advantage.
Thank you, Dottie, for that. All right, let's move over to Ian. This is a very interesting question right here. How has COVID-19 impacted functional outsourcing and safety?
So that's a great question, and I'll answer that in the context of our experience at TFS. So I'd say that whereas across the board at the start of the pandemic, I mean, clearly the conduct of clinical trials was severely impacted. We have a large proportion of our work that's post-marketing safety, and so the volume really remained relatively constant at the start of the pandemic, simply because the need to manage patient safety doesn't disappear just because of a pandemic. And if anything, you know, depending upon how the products are being used and perhaps in different ways during a pandemic, the need to monitor patient safety and potential signals increases. And what we've seen over at TFS over the course of the pandemic is that more and more customers are really actually looking to consider their safety outsourcing and looking to outsource that in a functional model. And that's both in post-marketing and clinical trials. And actually during this period, we've started our largest ever functional partnership in safety. And I think when I look back, I think there's two factors at play. I think firstly, we've seen customers who are looking to accelerate their plans for marketing approval during the pandemic. And that's not only just for products related to COVID, but also for other products. And secondly, we've seen customers who are looking to restructure their safety operations, you know, perhaps in order to reduce cost. So for example, in clinical trials where companies are looking for a partner across all of their studies, because it's much more cost effective than outsourcing on a study by study basis. and then larger companies looking to improve efficiency, perhaps by centralizing local affiliate activities. Now, clearly for large pharma with COVID vaccines, well, their outsourcing needs and challenges suddenly became very different once the vaccination started. And I think the challenges there have been more about the availability of resource associated with the massive increases in adverse event reporting.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Ian. All right, let's go to our final question. Now, this is going to be for all of our panelists here. The question is, what makes an functional service partnership successful? So I'd like to hear from each of you. So let's start off first with Allison. Allison? And you're going to unmute.
Indeed, I'm going to unmute. So I have flexibility. Sorry about that.
Okay.
So flexibility to me is with my rare disease and rare disease and pediatric hat on, is really the advantage of the FSP model, because the trials in which we work in are very unpredictable. They're designed to go with the information that the trial provides. So we may start with a natural history study, and in parallel we work on a therapeutic trial, and these studies are always changing, always evolving. They can literally change overnight. And the FSP model is really, I think, exceptional in these difficult to do trials. Originally, they were designed for sort of big clients and with big phase 3 studies, but actually they work beautifully in these small and difficult to do trials because of the unpredictability of the trials. We have protocol amendments regularly, like if we're talking every month or every country that we go to. We are talking of these, as Dottie very correctly said, these adaptive trials with the go and no-go decision, which can completely change the face of the study overnight. And with an FSP model, you can expand or contract your teams very easily without, as I mentioned, the recourse to going back to the change order process. You can retain across different trials, so from just say a natural history to a therapeutic trial, the expertise of setting up therapeutic CRFs and collecting data in your database, which will collect essentially similar information. That expertise can be crossed between trials, through a pipeline, and it really is, from my perspective, fantastic model of retaining the very niche information that you get in rare disease studies. And often when you work in a rare disease studies, like I have in more than one occasion, been the first to work on a therapeutic trial for a particular indication. That therapeutic information and that therapeutic expertise is absolutely valuable. You do not want to lose that between different phases of a trial or across trials. So yes, that to me, an FSP model offers that great flexibility without loss of quality, and indeed, in my opinion, with increased quality, because we are learning as a team altogether.
Okay, thank you so much, Allison, for that. Let's jump over to Dottie. Dottie?
Thank you. I would say for my area, it would be expertise. I'll go back to my earlier comment about the breadth of exposure that we get to systems and processes by having so many different partners and clients. It really is an invaluable resource, because if you pick an ill-fitted system or an ill-fitted process, it just will be inefficient processing of the data. So, I mean, an example would be if you did not have a robust enough system, you would not easily be able to predict possible down the line costs, such as needing to add an additional component or additional system to process some of the data that maybe were not anticipated. Conversely, if you have a very simple trial, if you're using a state-of-the-art system, it could be wasteful. These systems are complex, they're complicated, they require a lot of resources. They are very powerful and they can do a lot, but if you don't have those needs, then perhaps that's not the best system. So I think the point here is fit for purpose. we're able to evaluate what the needs are and then recommend an appropriate solution to that. And we have the experience to make those decisions. So that's really, I think, where our expertise is what helps make the partnership successful.
Okay, thank you, Dottie. Let's go over to Ian. Ian?
So I think for me, trust is one of the most important aspects. And certainly in my experience, those partnerships that have been the most successful are those where we've had the conversation regarding the design and the implementation of the partnership right up front. We've had the opportunity to get to know each other. We've had the opportunity to build trust with each other in our capabilities, but in also engaging in terms of kind of looking at what the strategy of the customer is and where the partnership's going. So, really it's about building that trust so that you can, as a team, present what in your experience is the right strategy for the customer. And you can get into that partnership discussion right early on, even before the company's chosen an outsourcing partner. And I think that's really where kind of it's so important to build that trust, because down the line, as Allison was saying, it's about building a partnership. Things may work, things may not work, and you need to have the trust in both sides of the partnership in order to have a successful partnership.
Okay, thank you, Ian. Okay, let's go over to Kymberli. Kymberli, what would you like to add to this?
My colleagues on the panel have said it all well, so I think I'll add partnership to round it out. And really, partnership, the reason I say that is it's based on our client partners' success. It's based on finding real solutions and getting real results in challenging therapeutic areas. That's essential. We understand and the investment that's made, and also the investment in the outcomes, that's so key. So as part of an FSP model, really the success is saying that you're fully invested, that you're giving your undivided attention to your client partner, which they deserve. And in order to do that and fully harness what a relationship would be, or the power of an FSP, it's developing long-term relationships. That's key. Through the transparency and the trust, we can develop a comprehensive strategy and create economic scale. Those are all the benefits of it, but it's really about engaging in a united portfolio, and that engagement is partnership.
Okay, well, thank you very much for answering all those questions. We have come to the end of this roundtable discussion, so thank you for your insights. Now, before we get into the Q&A portion of the webinar, let's do one more poll question, okay? I'm going to launch it right now. Just like before, it's done in real time, so your participation is strongly encouraged and very much appreciated. Just click on any of the below, and the question we have for you is, what is your interest in an FSP partner? So some interest, would like to know more, or very interested. Please go ahead and cast your vote, and then I will close the polls in a few seconds so we can share the results with everyone here. Okay, I'll give you a few more seconds for those of you who have not. If you can please go ahead and do so now, I greatly appreciate that. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating. I'm now going to close the polls and share the results. Okay, so the results are here, and we have 100% of our audience are saying some interest. So we have 0% would like to know more, or 0% very interested, but we do have 100% saying that they are interested. So thank you very much, everyone, for participating in our last poll question. And now we're going to begin the Q&A portion of the webinar, where we are going to address your questions. So remember, please send in your questions by using that questions window that's located on the right-hand side of your screen, and we'll try to attend to your questions during the time that we have together. So Kymberli, Ian, Allison, and Dottie, I did receive some questions while you were engaged in those conversations there on the fireside, and so I'm going to start with this first question, and it looks like it's for you, Kymberli. This audience member is asking, what is the current market demand for FSPs?
So the current demand is really in, it's growing tremendously in the biotech space. And it's really the fact of biotechs needing to have a partner to operationalize and provide some lower costs for overhead, to look at scalable solutions for teams. The example of bringing in a safety system from beginning to end, where they can keep the data collectively for making decisions. So honestly, the the scale for a biotech company where you may have a small team and helping to operationalize functions or multiple functions is really valuable and has really taken a leap, if you will, into what we are commonly see in a large size pharma.
Okay, thank you, Kymberli. All right, let's go on to our next question. This audience member is asking, how does TFS cost for these models? Do you cost per FTE for a contract or deliverable-based costing? Who would like to answer that question?
Yeah, I can take that as well. Actually, we kind of goes to what Allison said about flexibility. We look about the type of study or portfolio or design to make sure that it's actually the right cost model. We have an FTE fee for service base. We also have a deliverable milestone in a preferred providership, if you will. Of course, we're looking at how we can keep costs reasonable because we should be and have been able to provide expertise to reduce redundancies and risks over time, which then benefits both organizations when it comes to a costing model. So those designs of milestone or a preferred partnership cost structure as well is what we have put in place for our clients. And we talk through that at the start of a partnership at an MSA level, as well as throughout the portfolio and making sure we make adjustments as we see fit.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for that. Okay, here's our next question. This audience member is asking, what are the challenges for an FSP model on biomatrix? Either Dottie or Kymberli, this might be for you.
I can take this one, Kymberli. Well, I think, there's potential for a lot of challenges, but I think knowing what they are and planning for them is really the key. So I would say one of the bigger ones is understanding the split of services and function across the partnership. So depending on how the split of those activities rolls out, you really need to do not a high level, but once you've made decisions, what system and whose processes, you need, if there is any crossover between the companies, we need to have a very technical discussion at a very granular level to make sure that we do understand what systems need to talk to each other, how they're going to interact, and the type and volume of that data and the frequency. Understanding that and all the foundational components under those systems, really understanding how each piece is connected is really essential to avoiding issues down the road. If you take the time to do that, and we do, you'll avoid the majority of problems when it comes to technology. You really need to do the upfront work and the upfront validation, make sure your systems are connected, talking, and not vulnerable to various influences that are out of your control. If you can do that, you set yourself up for a much smoother rollout of the study. Kymberli, I don't know if you would like to add anything to that.
I think you said it. It's I would say probably one other thing about technology, and that's just the understanding and being able to have some fluidity with the changes that technology brings, especially with decentralized trial models and design, and being able to pick from that toolbox, if you will, is where we have been able to work with our client partners, and one of which Dottie is embedded with, to be able to pull out from the tool set. And for each project design, that's another value, is be able to establish that right fit for purpose technology and not just kind of a cookie cutter approach. So that's, I would say, to Dottie's answer, a key piece for biometrics and biostat data management specifically.
Okay, thank you both for that. This looks like it's a question for Ian, because we're talking about safety here. This audience member is asking, what is the advantage for companies to outsource safety in an FSP model?
Okay, so in clinical trials, I'd say that we still see companies outsourcing safety in a full service model where they're outsourcing on a study-by-study basis. Now, what tends to happen is as companies near the end of clinical development and begin to consider marketing approval, they then realize that they've got their safety data in multiple different safety databases, and then potentially need to pay again to have that data migrated into a global safety database. So outsourcing in a clinical trial safety is much more cost effective to manage the safety. It's easier to have consistency. You can have a single set of processes. You can have obviously your SAE management within your safety management plans. You can have consistency across, and it's much easier to see have the oversight of the performance if you're outsourcing to a single safety provider, as opposed to outsourcing to multiple different companies that are perhaps going to have different processes, different set of metrics, and it's much more resource intensive to oversee that partnership. Now, for post-marketing, we see that the smaller companies typically outsource because they don't have the expertise in-house, they don't have the resources in-house to manage the broad set of pharmacovigilance obligations, particularly where you've got local activities as well that need to be done. And for the larger companies, as I said earlier, it's really about kind of cost efficiency as you're looking at how your system has evolved and how it's set up, to then look at perhaps outsourcing that in order to consolidate some of the PV activities.
Thank you so much, Ian, but don't go anywhere, because here's the next question. Can each of you briefly provide an overview or an example of the companies you worked with in an FSP model today? And Ian, let's start with you again.
Sure. So I would say at TFS, the majority of our safety business is actually managed as a functional outsourcing model. And I think simply that's because it makes the most sense to outsource safety in that way. And the partners that we work with, they vary in terms of where they are in development. We've got some who only focus on clinical development, in which case we're providing safety services across all of their studies. And then we've got partners who are in the post-marketing space, who've asked us to effectively be their pharmacovigilance system, in which case we are then working with them to make sure that they have the necessary oversight of that system. And as I said earlier, we work with some companies who've got products both in clinical development and post-approval. We've got some who also have expanded access and compassionate use programs. And for those, we really look at the existing infrastructure of the organization and build a bespoke outsourcing model to fit in with their needs and their capability requirements.
Okay, thanks, Ian. Sorry, let's jump over to Allison. Allison, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, so I'd like to talk about, I'm working in rare disease. We're working on a natural history study where our sponsors retained, in the natural history study, protocol writing, medical monitoring and safety in-house, but they're outsourcing an FSP model, the data management and the biostats. And we anticipate that they will continue to do that in the sister study, which is a stem cell treatment. And they may even outsource some of these other functions that they've kept in-house for these smaller studies. And the reason that they do that is to keep the expertise. This is an unmet need, disease. There's no therapeutic offering for this disease. And that niche therapeutic area, it's kind of a no-brainer to want to retain that amongst the teams that are working on your study, because it's very niche. No other company, no other team will have that expertise. And so at TFS, we can offer these in an FSP model, these non-therapeutic core parts of a study, so like data management, etc. But we can, if they want to outsource data management, we can do that. And I think, as Kymberli mentioned, we can offer a very flexible FSP model at TFS. Because we're a medium-sized CRO, we're flexible in any case, but in between the offering of the full service and a single service like safety, we can offer everything in between and be very flexible with it. So I think, particularly in rare disease, we offer something that's really unique. And yeah, I think it's in terms of retaining therapeutic knowledge and quality, I think it's quite unusual.
Okay, all right, thank you. And let's jump to Kymberli to end this part off. Kymberli, your comments here?
Yes, we actually have a couple of unique opportunities that we've built in FSP model. One is with an academic center, and our academic partner was really looking for support across data management, shifting from some older technologies and platforms to being able to move that into a partner's remit who already had that structure in place, who were able to build expertise across the platforms, as well as look at what their book of work was and is, and understanding that that variety is a mix between commercial and government. We were and have been able to really fully operationalize their services, meet their needs, not only from a cost perspective, but also a study design across different therapeutic areas, and introduce new tools and technologies to meet the needs of their portfolio and faculty. So it's a really good example that shows that the variety and being able to meet your client partner where they are and bringing expertise to the table to, again, ensure that both missions are aligned, but also meeting the overall purpose of why we're all in this industry, and that's to help our participants and where they need.
Okay, thank you so much, Kymberli. I'm going to squeeze in one last question because we're coming to the end of the time here. Dottie, this looks like it's for you. What does functional outsourcing mean in the context of biometrics, and what types of FSP model are there?
Okay, functional outsourcing is exactly what it sounds like. It's where the client outsources an entire function. So for biometrics, it could be and we've discussed this already, it could be the full suite of services for biometrics. It could be just data management. It could be just statistics. It could be just SAS programming. Right now, I'm in a partnership where all three of those services are outsourced to us. But really, any combination, as Allison also mentioned earlier, any combination of those services are possible because, again, it's fit for purpose. So we're trying to meet your needs. So whatever pieces you need support on, we can develop a model to support that.
Okay, perfectly said. Thank you so much for that, Dante. Well, thank you very much for those questions. We have reached the end of the question and answer portion of the webinar. If we couldn't attend to your questions, the team at TFS Health Science may follow up with you after this presentation. And if you have any further questions, please direct them to the email addresses that you see on your screen there. Thank you everyone for participating in today's webinar. You will be receiving a follow-up email from Xtalks with access to the recorded archive for this event. A survey window will be popping up on your screen. Your participation is appreciated as it will help us to improve on our further webinars. Now in a few seconds, I'm going to send you a link in your chat box. You'll be able to view the recording of this event with that link and also share this link with your colleagues once they register for the recording as well. And get even more out of today's presentation by downloading the supporting materials that are available under the Handouts tab. And we have two of them there for you. One is a TFS company profile, and then TFS Health Science Reference Sheet Functional Service Partnership. So please go and check them out. So I encourage you to do that. Now, please join us in thanking our speakers, Kymberli, Ian, Allison, and Dottie, for that very insightful roundtable discussion and for answering all your questions. So thank you very much, everyone. And they're saying thank you. All right. I know you are. We hope you found this webinar informative. It has been my pleasure to be your webinar moderator. On behalf of the team here at Xtalks, we thank you for joining us. I'm Sonia Hunt. Until next time, please take care and bye for now. Bye, everyone. Thank you again, everyone. Bye.